Right, Tommy, we're back for part 2 of our Christopher Nolan retrospective rankings here.
Top 5.
We're going to kick it off with, I mentioned in the previous part that I watched this one recently to re-jog my memory. A film that's all about memory, and it's Memento.
Nice.
I have this condition.
A condition?
It's my memory.
Amnesia.
No. It's different from that.
So you watched it again, like you hadn't seen it in a while, and you rewatched it like last night or like a couple of nights ago, right? How was the experience?
Yes, I think the very first time I watched this was in college. My film tutor showed it to us, and it was one of those films, kind of like Fight Club, that's just like perfect for you. Like when you're a younger audience, you haven't got as breadth as knowledge of as many films that are kind of like psychological like this.
Yeah.
It's one that really stays with you forever. You know, you look up theory videos on it. But I think because it was so impactful the first time I watched it, it was one of those films that stuck with me for a while. So I think I'd only ever watched it that one time. So honestly, after so many years, I had kind of like totally forgotten about this movie. I just remember enjoying it a lot. So a rewatch was really good the other day, and yeah, it just sort of reinvigorated the sense of how good this movie is. It really solidifies, you know, so it's only Nolan's second feature film, but it really solidifies his style, just the craft of the way he likes to structure movies. And yeah, this one adapted from a story by his brother Jonathan Nolan, who becomes a long-time collaborator on his projects. I think it's based off Jonathan Nolan wrote a short story called Memento Mori, produced on a pretty modest budget, follows Guy Pearce as the protagonist.
Leonard Shelby.
Yes, Leonard. He's a man suffering from short-term memory loss. He's had an accident, he can't create new memories, so he sort of ends up writing all these notes around his room and writing all these notes on his body to remind him of this sort of central mystery that he's trying to solve. And he believes that somebody has murdered his wife, and he is trying to track them down, but obviously with the issue of him not remembering anything more than, I don't know, his memory seems to reset after every like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
It's unclear as long as a scene takes, and then we can move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in some scenes it happens really fast.
Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking, how does this guy get anywhere?
Not much to see in this scenario. Let's move on to the next one, or the previous one, I should say.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Memento. Every time I revisit it, I discover something new to admire. I've seen it, I don't know, at least 10 to 15 times maybe.
Oh, nice, yeah.
The more I watch it, the more I appreciate how meticulously constructed it is. I think it's just one of those movies. I mean, it's definitely nostalgia. It's definitely seeing it in very formative years. You know, I saw it in high school.
Yeah.
It blew my mind how Nolan managed to use editing in such a unique way. You can never make another movie like Memento. Here we have like the genius of the structure that really just, I love it. Something that you didn't mention in your breakdown of the premise of the film is, you know, that we have two separate storylines, color sequences that are presented in reverse chronological order. So we start with the last scene of the film, basically, in reverse, playing over the credits, and then we move backwards in time to the beginning of the story. And then we have these black and white sequences that progress in normal chronological order, and they follow Leonard. He's in a motel room and he's on the phone with someone we don't know who, and he's explaining his condition and backstory on the phone, filling the gaps of what we're witnessing, what's happening, what's going on. He's explaining his condition, he's explaining the tattoos, the Polaroids, and, you know, Barry Jenkins, what's his name? The name tattooed on his hand. I'm blanking.
Sammy
Jenkins. Barry Jenkins is a director. What the fuck?
He's always talking about Sammy Jenkins because that's the memory he has of this older guy who's going through the same experience. But then the guy he's looking for who thinks murdered his wife is John G.
Yeah, John G is murdered your wife and did something else that we cannot say on YouTube. But yeah, he has Sammy Jenkins tattoo on his hand to remember, you know, like this condition. Eventually, these two timelines, the color sequences and the black and white sequences, they converge, and then we progress from there. I think with Nolan, it's always about the gimmick. It's always about how is he gonna use the medium of film in a unique way to tell the story. You know, what kind of idea is gonna kind of like influence the way the story progresses and how we perceive the film. And I think this is one one of his best attempts. And I use gimmick. It's not like I'm not using it in a bad way. It's just, okay, let's create a unique version of the story where we kinda want the viewer to feel like Leonard, and like, we can barely follow what's happening because we're witnessing it in reverse, because we're trying to piece together all the pieces that make this story make sense.
Yeah, and it's how Leonard would recount his own memories, I guess. He recounts them in reverse, and it's all notes that he's written from the past to remember things that have happened in the present. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. What I love so much about this, and maybe something that doesn't work as well in other movies that we've discussed, it's not just stylistic, it's ingrained in what the movie is. It would not work as well if told chronologically, right? It would be a very simple and generic story. Through editing, the film allows the audience to experience this confusion firsthand, and we discover information exactly as he does.
Yeah.
And we are trying to reconstruct events like he's doing.
But if the film was more generic and like in a chronological order, it would be much more similar to Insomnia than the rest of Nolan's work. It'd still be like a real good detective crime thriller, but it is, like you said, it's the gimmick of the structure is what elevates this material.
Yeah, he found this storytelling device that feels completely inseparable from the film itself. You remember Memento because of how the story is told. I think, all the criticism that Nolan gets sometimes, his characters are not really well established or fleshed out. But Leonard is very memorable and very well realized.
That rule does not apply to this movie whatsoever. You have a very, very limited cast here. You've got Guy Pearce. You got, is it Joe Pantoliano? Pantoliano, yeah. I knew I'd butcher that.
That's why you have the Italian guy here.
Yeah, finally. And we have Carrie-Anne Moss, obviously. We got
both
a nice
from the
little
Matrix, by the way.
Yeah, Cypher and Trinity here. Both of them are great. They really carry this movie, those three. Because I had forgotten a lot about this film. I just immediately from the off, you're just like, fucking Joe Pantoliano's how'd you say it again?
Pantoliano. So just say Teddy.
You're like, this motherfucker is not to be trusted.
But there's a little twist there as well.
For sure. They play it so well. Once you sort of get the reveal with Carrie-Anne Moss, you're like, oh my god, have I been played? Teddy's the good guy, and then it all comes to light in the end. But yeah, I think both of them they give great performances. Guy Pearce, obviously fantastic in this as well. When you see his performance in this, you're surprised you didn't see him in more stuff going forward. But
yeah, and I think arguably this is the defining performance of his career, and it's sad that, it is successful, is fine, but yeah, I love him. And
no, let's all feel sorry for Guy Pearce.
But yeah, it's just this remarkable emotional core, and like he anchors the film. Like you really feel for him. You don't even trust him, and he doesn't even trust himself. And because the film is ultimately about self-deception, right? Like the story that he tells to himself to survive and keep going. By the end, rather the beginning of the film, Leonard realizes the truth of his actions. He understands what's happening, and he chooses to continue the cycle of looking for John G, because having someone to chase gives his life meaning, and he can't kind of like accept how stuff went down in reality, I guess. He lives in his own little bubble. So I love the ending. I love the idea of forgetting becoming a way of escaping guilt.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's safer there. He doesn't have to confront the reality of what happened.
Yeah.
Everything that happened with Lenny.
Sammy Jenkins.
Sammy Jenkins.
And I think when you're older and you've seen a lot more movies like this, that twist is maybe obvious. You can see that coming, that this Sammy Jenkins story isn't real, because it seems too implausible that he's an insurance broker who had an encounter with somebody going through this very specific and rare condition, and he's now experiencing it too. You're like, there's definitely something not right here. You worry that that's going to be the only revelation, but it's really not. That's just part of the larger revelation at the end. I think the bigger revelation and sort of the bigger mind-bending twists are that are just how the other characters have been using him because of his condition and the cycle that he's been going on trying to find this John G guy.
Yeah, I don't know. When I first watched this movie and you have that flashback, like black and white flashback, for a split second, instead of Sammy Jenkins, you see Leonard, and like, oh my god, it was him. Like, of course, I was a teenager, so everything would surprise me at that point.
Yeah.
But I found that it was so cool and elegant and perfect
Oh,
for the film. So
100%, 100%. It's still really well done. It's one of those things when I mentioned off the bat about this film working so well when you're a bit younger, similar to Fight Club, and when you don't you don't see the clues seeded around the reveals.
even though they're so obvious.
Yeah.
Like anytime in a movie or a TV show, we recently mentioned, we talked about The Boys, and anytime there's two characters and one of them only interacts with the other character, you're like, okay, that character is in their mind.
Oh my god, I mean, The Boys did it so terribly. For me, it reminds me of the revelation you get in Shutter Island quite a lot with DiCaprio's character.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely. DiCaprio is also escaping the same kind of guilt and grief.
Exactly. It's this is fantastic. It really is. It deserves the credit it gets, and it's easy to forget, pardon the pun, how good Memento is.
I don't even know if I've met you before. I've told you this before, haven't I?
Okay, moving on to the next one. Number 4
All right.
on my list, we have Batman Begins.
All right. Nice. I have it at number 3.
Okay, perfect. We're almost together on this one.
Well, but there's an important difference here. We're very close in ranking, but clearly you've ranked another Batman movie higher than this.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
I have The Dark Knight at number 4.
Right. Well, this is an interesting one because I was going to preface this with saying, because I think I mentioned when we went on to The Dark Knight Rises how the first time I watched that blew me away, and I was like, oh, this is one of the best of the trilogy or whatever. But then as time goes on, you realize it's probably the weakest of the 3.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but Batman Begins ages like a fine wine to me. I enjoyed it a lot when it first came out, obviously, but I felt like The Dark Knight smashed it out the water back then. But now, upon rewatches of the whole trilogy, Batman Begins, I would probably say it's the best film of the trilogy. But I do prefer, entertainment-wise, The Dark Knight, and I think it has higher highs. But I would say, yeah, Batman Begins is the best Batman film of the whole trilogy.
That's fair. And you find me agreeing with your statement. I love it so much that I put it above The Dark Knight, even though I love those movies.
Yeah, so fair.
I just think, I love Batman as a character, and Batman Begins is a Batman movie first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's his origin, and it's done beautifully. A great reinvention, one of the very first of the modern blockbuster comic book era, and there was so much that could go wrong with this movie, but Nolan managed to make a banger of a film.
Yeah, because I guess we were coming off the Joel Schumacher. Did he do a trilogy or did he just do 2 films?
He did Batman Forever and then Batman and Robin.
Yeah, so those were the last Batman films we had. So we obviously had Tim Burton's interpretation, the kind of gothic, almost fantastical side. We get Joel Schumacher giving you the most goofy, sort of heightened version of the kids' cartoon of Batman. And then Nolan would have to come in and have to give it a fresh take, and the grounded superhero was, I suppose Spider-Man to a degree, the Tobey Maguire ones are grounded, so he's, he gives that grounded take, and I think I said this about Dark Knight Rises, but that's a style that has now permeated the superhero genre still today. It's like, I feel like a lot of filmmakers who tackle the genre want to be like, yeah, let's ground it, let's almost do like the Nolan interpretation. I feel like Matt Reeves is kind of still treading that line of wanting to do that Nolan grounded aspect because it works so well for him.
Grounded works for Batman because Batman has so many different interpretations of its mythos and lore and characters. You can go grounded, you can go absolutely insane, crazy, comic booky, and it still works. And that's the beauty of Batman. I love this movie the most out of all 3 because it strikes that balance, I think, the best. You still have the very comic booky, heightened elements of like the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul, but it's not an immortal. It's just like a very suave guy, and it's Liam Neeson, and he teaches you ninja skills.
But is he immortal? I mean, he potentially might be immortal.
It potentially might be, but like it's implied, it's not.
Yeah.
You can still have like a scarecrow and you can still have the fear gas and all that stuff, but it's grounded a little bit. But then something that I think the other movies in the trilogy lost along the way, like Gotham City itself, I prefer it in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
It feels dirty and oppressive and genuinely dangerous and the kind of place where a vigilante like Batman would actually be needed. While in The Dark Knight it's Chicago and in The Dark Knight Rises it's New York City for some reason. Oh, because they need the bridges. They need to blow up the bridges. So, like I feel like the Gotham City of Begins, it's gothic without being too fantastical. It still feels real.
Yeah.
The elevated train system, everything. It's comic booky, but it's real. I just love how corrupt and horrible and rainy and grimy it feels compared to the different interpretations of the city that we would get later.
Would you say this one is still more entertaining than The Dark Knight as well, and has as high highs?
I mean, it's a difficult one for me because, of course, The Dark Knight is amazing. It's great. You have the Joker, and there's so many hype moments in that film. I feel like it's a moot point in a way because when I watch Begins, then I watch The Dark Knight, and then I watch The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, let me pick one of the three. But yeah, like, I guess on an entertainment level, The Dark Knight hits the ground running. Batman is already established. We can already have fun with the Joker from the very first scene, and then there's like the chase through Gotham and like the ending with the two fairies. We're not talking about the movie yet, but what I love about Batman Begins, it's a Batman story first.
Yeah, and I think that's the strength in origin stories, and it's why it was kind of frustrating with the MCU. It's like, oh, we've seen too many origin stories, we're just gonna skip that part. Yeah, with Batman, I think it does. You spend so much time with him as Bruce Wayne, dealing with the repercussions of his parents' death, and then wanting to go on this revenge, trying to kill Falcone himself, and then going off to like the Himalayan mountains to go discover himself.
Of course, I feel like one element that is often underrated about this movie specifically is how elegant the script is. Like how the theme of fear. The Dark Knight has this theme of chaos versus order and control.
Yeah.
Here we have fear, and everything revolves around the concept of fear. From Bruce's origin story as Batman, like the idea that he falls in this pit full of bats, and like the character of the Scarecrow and the League of Legends, they all weaponize fear, and Batman himself ultimately becomes someone who turns fear against those
You called the League of Shadows the League of Legends, and it makes them sound so silly. You're like, oh, watch out! Here comes Ra's al Ghul and the League of Legends.
Is the boss legend? Is the main legend? Yeah, I'm getting so excited talking about this movie that I miss important bits. But yeah, I just think it's such the whole training sequence in the snow with Ra's al Ghul, and then the refusal by Bruce to kill the guy, that moment that defines him as a character and will define him in the next movies as well. Like the idea that Batman is a vengeful spirit, but it will not take a life, even though he takes a bunch of lives, and that's fine. But
But no, yeah, circling back to the themes, they move the themes in really well with the plot. Like, obviously Batman's always dealt with the concept of fear, mastering his own fears and then inflicting that upon his enemies, and weaving in the Ra's al Ghul plot line with Scarecrow's actually working for the League of Shadows, and they've stolen this Wayne tech that can release the steam from all the water.
It's so perfect.
Brilliant plot for a superhero movie, and also ties it in with all the themes of the story, which gives it that kind of elevated status, and makes it what Nolan does, turns this superhero blockbuster into a quite thought-provoking, movie.
Yeah, and also we haven't talked about the cast yet. Christian Bale, excellent as Bruce Wayne, excellent as Batman.
Yeah, probably his best movie for him specifically, the first one.
It's really good in 3 as well. But it has to play a very different kind of Bruce.
3 has all the, where is it? I want to right now. Whereas I feel like he really he doesn't maybe because we don't see Batman as much in this one, but he really tones down that, I think, in the first one.
Well, because he's more soft spoken in the first one, like it becomes more of the growly voice with the second and third one.
But like and you mentioned this about Dark Knight Rises, the fight in the shipping containers, like in the shipping dockyard in the first film, where I think
iconic.
It's iconic, and it's maybe the first time he really suits up, and we see him in an action scene, and like you said, we see it from the perspectives of the victims or the criminals. It's the best fight scene in the whole trilogy.
Yeah, even though you can't see anything, it's just a guy in the dark. But yeah, I think it strikes the perfect balance here, between Bruce and Batman. And when he plays Bruce, it can be the playboy, it can be the fun party boy, but also there's pain in the performance, there's pain behind his eyes. I think you need a great actor to portray a character like Batman, and Christian Bale does a fantastic job. Cillian Murphy as Jonathan Crane or Scarecrow is also really good, really memorable.
I love that he makes an appearance in every single one as well. It's always great to see it in no matter how small the capacity is. It's great to see him because Scarecrow is one of the best villains in the trilogy for sure.
He's one of his best villains, period. Yeah, and it's it's just fascinating looking back, knowing this was the beginning of their creative partnership.
I mean, Alfred as well, fantastic. I mean, it's going to be hard to ever top Michael Caine as Alfred, and also Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. His addition to it is amazing.
Is great. Staying on Alfred for a second, we've had two other Alfreds since Michael Caine, in Andy Serkis and Jeremy Irons, which are both great actors and also great choices for an Alfred. But still, Alfred to me is Michael Caine and will always be Michael Caine.
Yeah.
No shade.
You know what? Visually, Alfred for me is I cannot remember the actor's name, but the guy from Batman and Robin, like he visually is my perfect Alfred.
Oh yeah.
Michael Caine's performance.
Too much. Too old.
He's so old. That one.
I think Michael Caine, you can still imagine him maybe being like a spy when in his younger years, like he is still very suave and smart.
Yeah. And you can imagine him being a little bit of help. Whereas like the Batman and Robin Alfred, you imagine him going off to like set up some security cameras and him just having a nap in the chair or something.
He needs to be taken care of and not the other way around. But yeah, he's just great. He's warm, he's humorous, he's wise, he's emotionally very important for Bruce. He helps him a lot. And we also, we would remiss not to mention Rachel, who is played by Katie Holmes in this movie and will be played by Maggie Gyllenhaal in The Dark Knight. I do prefer Gyllenhaal's interpretation of Rachel to Katie Holmes.
I don't think Katie Holmes is bad in this first film at all. And it's funny how little this bothers me. Going from Batman Begins to The Dark Knight, you'd think it would annoy you more or bother you more in the overall feel of the trilogy, but it really doesn't. It's not seamless at all. But
no.
It just works.
It's fine. And also, I think Maggie Gyllenhaal's performance works better for what Rachel has to do in The Dark Knight compared to Katie Holmes, because the character is written the same. They're both ambitious, morally driven women, very intelligent, go-getters, but Holmes plays it more of like as a conventional love interest in like a superhero movie, whereas Gyllenhaal, she brings out a little bit more personality and individuality, I think, in the second film. So I think, she works for this one, but she's still a little bit stereotypically, like, oh, damsel in distress. Oh my God, I need to save Rachel because she was poisoned or wherever.
But it's not necessarily just because of her affiliation with like the male protagonist. It's because of her. She's gone too far in her investigations in the Scarecrow and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like her own actions have got her into that situation. So I don't know whether it's a damsel in distress necessarily.
That's fair. Oh no, she's not, but she becomes that like later on. Like she's introduced as like
but once she gets cured of her fear toxin, she's out on the streets. She fucking tasers Scarecrow in the face, and she saves the little boy. So
That's true.
She's a hero in her own right in this story. And I think that's what Nolan gets so well, not just in Batman Begins, but in the whole trilogy. There's a lot of side characters, and they each get their thing to do. And whether it's a villain, they get their really really high point sort of evil moment, and or whether they're sort of one of the good characters. You know, Gary Oldman as
Oh my God, yeah, we didn't we didn't mention him.
what's his name? Gordon.
Yeah, Jim Gordon.
Jim Gordon. That's it. Yeah. Gary Oldman is Jim Gordon.
Who still is not commissioner yet in this one. He becomes commissioner in the second one. They tease that stuff. They know that, like, you know, comic book nerds will lose their minds. Oh my God, he's Commissioner Gordon now.
It's come full circle, boy.
I love it.
Yeah, no, but it's true. It's true. Like, I'm pretty sure I probably had that reaction when I saw the second one. You're like, he's the commissioner now. It's yeah, no, and Nolan really understands how important those things are and when to give them, when to hold them back. Yeah, it's a tough one. Now, after talking about it, it is a tough one that I'm putting this one where it is, but because, like I said, I do believe Batman Begins is the better film as a whole.
It is the better Batman film for sure. Like The Dark Knight, we'll get to it, but it's more of like it's an amazing action thriller with Batman in it sometimes. Its more interesting elements are not entirely linked to Batman and Batman's mythos. While here, you know, we have this outstanding reinvention of one of popular culture's, you know, greatest heroes. And it's thematically focused, and it's satisfying emotionally, and it embraces Batman as a comic book character while still trying to ground the story in a believable world. And I think that's the greatest achievement for this movie specifically.
Yeah, and I have to mention, you know, for me, the greatest achievement of this film itself is there's a sequence when I think Falcone, you know, Scarecrow drugs Falcone, and also when Scarecrow gets drugged himself, and we see things from the perspective of the fear gas. And you get that shot, oh my God, you get that shot of Batman, and his like mouth is oozing this black ink, and Scarecrow is terrified of him. And I'm like, what? Nolan went all out. You know, this is because we maybe don't see that as much in a lot of Nolan films. We talk about how they can be a bit sterile and maybe a bit cold.
Yeah.
But he really sort of like, that's quite un-Nolan-y, you know, the sort of hallucinatory bits that we see in this and how sort of fantastical they become.
Yeah, agreed.
Guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
Nice, right. So my number 3, these are hard, and probably if you asked me in any other time of the year that they might be somewhat interchangeable. But for the sake of the record, my third favorite Christopher Nolan film is Inception.
All right. I already told you that my number 3 is Batman Begins, and I put Inception at number 5.
Nice. Now, as I said off the bat, I was talking about how sort of maybe Nolan sort of picked up that Spielberg mantle of making commercially, critically successful blockbusters that are thought-provoking and also, you know, appeal to the masses. And this period of Nolan's career is his absolute peak. Around sort of 2006 to 2012, 2014, that period, he was just making the biggest and best movies, raking in all the money and, you know, raking in all the awards, and this guy was just on top of the world. And comes out with Inception, you know, his own sci-fi screenplay that Nolan had worked on for many, many years. And we'd sort of set up a bit of the premise earlier. It's a sort of high concept take on a heist movie, basically, with this technology that people can sort of infiltrate your dreams and implant ideas or steal ideas from your dreams, basically.
Yeah.
That's the sort of setup. All-star cast in this one.
Oh my God, yeah.
Probably like one of like Nolan's most recognizable films, I'd say. You know, when people think of Nolan, I think Inception's probably, if you were to mention a top 3, I think Inception would come up a lot.
It's very representative of him, his style and his, you know, filmography for sure.
And it just was such a talking point. I remember when it came out, just people watching Inception be like, oh my God, I've just seen Inception. I don't understand it. What is it? What is this? But I love it. I personally never found it that confusing as a story.
Me neither. No.
But I think it's fucking brilliant.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, I put it at number 5, and I'll go into the reasons why later. But first, let me gush about this movie for a second, because, I mean, it came out in 2010, perfect time for me. And this came out after The Dark Knight. So with Begins, people showed up for Batman, but Nolan was not a name yet for the general public. Then The Dark Knight made Nolan one of the biggest directors in the world because of the success of the film. And then Inception proved that audiences would show up for Christopher Nolan himself. And I think it's a completely original science fiction concept, and it became one of the biggest cinematic events of not only that year, but the decade, I think. You know, it was endlessly parodied and referenced in, like, you know, we recently rewatched all the scary movies, and I don't remember which one they had like an Inception parody.
Scary Movie 4.
Oh, there you go. So, you know, and you know, at this stage of his career, Nolan had mastered the concept of one for them, one for me. You know, like Hollywood
Yeah.
has always had this tradition where directors alternate between studio projects and like personal passion projects. You make one for the studio and then you make one for
But
yourself.
luckily with Nolan's, the ones for him are also for us too.
Yeah, there you go. No, them meaning, you know, the studios, of course. But like, you know, after Batman Begins, he did The Prestige. Warner Bros. Gave him the freedom and the money, I guess, to do The Prestige. And then after the enormous success of The Dark Knight, we had to wait a very long time to get the sequel because he was busy for a couple of years making Inception, which, you know, you're forgiven, man. It's okay.
Yeah, well, it was worth it.
But yeah, I love Inception. I love the central idea of it. You know, this team of specialists entering people's dreams to steal or implant information and ideas. And, you know, it's essentially a heist movie, but in someone's mind. The vault is someone's subconscious, basically. And it's, you know, again, I've used this word a lot to describe Nolan movies and Nolan's concept, but it's a very elegant concept. You know, it combines these genres and
It's so simple that you kind of can't. I don't know. Maybe there is some other films or books that have done this concept before, but it's such a simple concept. You're like, how has this not been done on like a big scale before? But it's genius as well.
it hasn't been done like Nolan did. You know, we'll get into an example of a similar concept done completely differently. And one of the reasons why maybe this movie throughout the years has lost some of its, you know, I still love it, but like back in the day, I was like, oh my God, Inception is like one of the best films I've ever seen. And now, you know, like my judgment of it is a little bit like still warm, but a little bit, you know, like, yeah, okay, it's a good movie. But yeah, like you mentioned the cast, the ensemble of this is fantastic. Leo DiCaprio was at the height of his career, and Dom Cobb is just one of his most iconic role for sure. We have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, pretty cool, as Arthur. Tom Hardy is also in this, you know, is really suave and humorous.
He's so cool in this. Tom Hardy, he's not in it loads, but like he just has this fucking charisma in this movie that he's
the fun one.
He's so magnetic on screen. Yeah.
Then we have Elliot Page's Ariadne and Ken Watanabe, who I love in everything.
Yeah.
It's such a, just like, yeah, he brings so much gravitas and just like oomph.
The opening scene is with him as the old man is so convincing. Like he
And
does
so
that
intriguing,
so
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Definitely one of Nolan's strongest ensembles, especially if you want to compare it to other similar movies. You know, like Tenet, the ensemble there is not nearly as memorable as the one in Inception.
No. And you didn't mention Marion Cotillard as well, who we slated her in the Dark Knight Rises segment because of how bad that death scene was. You know, and for the most part, she's good in that film, except from that end scene. But in this, she's so menacing. You know, we learn that obviously she's
almost a villain.
Yeah, and she's, because of the grief that DiCaprio's character feels, she keeps sort of prevailing into his dreams and interrupting the heist moments, and just you feel such a threat whenever you see her. Yeah, she has such a presence here, and it's a tough role because it's a very melodramatic character she's playing.
Yeah, it's like the memory of a person, basically.
And she does it brilliantly.
The distorted memory of a person. You know, she's great. She's great. So, if you'll allow me, I would like to go a little bit into the negatives, I guess.
Yeah.
Which are not really negatives. It's a fantastic film. It's a very solid heist movie. Every member of the team has a specific role. Every dream level has new complications, and the way that the story progresses and the mission becomes progressively more difficult, and the layers stack up on top of one another. It's fantastic. It's just a great, amazing little film. Well, big film. My biggest criticism concerns the dream world itself, because I feel like, given the premise, I don't think Nolan pushes the concept nearly as far as he could have, because dreams are limitless and they are irrational and they can be surreal and they ignore logic completely.
Yeah, whereas like the the pinnacle of that is like a never-ending, normal-looking staircase. It's like, well, I've dreamt weirder shit than that.
Yeah. There's a revolving hallway, and there's like at some point there's like a train in the middle of the street. Oh my god, that shouldn't be there. And then, of course, you have the iconic shot of, the streets of Paris kind of like folding over themselves. But that moment feels like almost it's there for the trailers. Like it's not like hugely consequential that you can fold the city onto itself.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't actually affect the plot. It's just a visual thing, yeah.
Which is an amazing visual, but like again, like it's like this tendency of Nolan to ground everything into realism as much as possible.
Did you want like a chase sequence where they're being chased in like Doctor Strange style, the city's warping around them and
I mean, I don't know, like maybe that wouldn't be Nolan, right? Like it makes sense that he wanted to make it more real. If you want to go for the heist movie vibe, if you go full, CGI weirdness, maybe that's not what you want visually for your movie to be. So I understand the choice, and that's fine. For me, thinking about the concept, thinking about the idea of dreams within dreams, there's one comparison that many people have made throughout the years with the movie Paprika. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's Satoshi Kon's anime film from the early 2000s, and both films explore the idea of entering other people's dreams. And where Paprika, and also it makes sense, it's an animated film, but like it fully embraces the surreal.
Yeah, it gets way more fantastical, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's bizarre, it's fluid, it's unpredictable, and Inception feels much more restrained in comparison. And I'm not saying like neither approach is inherently better.
No.
It's simply they're aiming for different things, and they're different mediums as well.
But I totally get you. I would have loved, just some if like somebody like a David Lynch could have came on just for like a month and been like, yeah, maybe do this with the dream sequence.
Just put a little weird guy over there.
Yeah, just some bizarre things. Like I just had a thought in my head, like as they keep delving deeper and deeper into the dreams.
Yeah, it should degrade like Backrooms.
Yes. Yeah, you turn around to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character and his like eyes are like melting away or like drooping down or like looks obscured. You know what I mean? Like some more.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to mention that thing in The Dark Knight that it's in Batman Begins, sorry, where they have the hallucinatory scene and Nolan gets weird with it. Whereas he doesn't get weird with anything in Inception when it's the premise is rife to get a little bit strange.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, if you travel, like we see glimpses of what dreams within dreams could look like, but like we hear Cobb talking about like creating buildings and like cities and then destroying them, and you see them kind of like in the dream playing with sand, and then there's like buildings in the background being destroyed or created, but it's just a little bit too realistic and too grounded for what the premise can allow you to do.
Yeah, I suppose for the main plot line, they get away with it. Again, they set this up early on in the film. The whole point when you're in someone's dream and you brought someone into your dream, you want to create this element of realism because you're trying to trick them into thinking the world is real. So obviously, you don't want things to be too wacky, but I'm totally with you. This film misses some really good opportunities to have some surrealism or some dark elements, and it's not really what Nolan does. And yeah, like you give this premise and this film to a different director, and yeah, I could see the interpretations of how this story could be told are so vastly different.
But then you run into the opposite risk of having something like Sucker Punch, Zack Snyder movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh, unfortunately, yes.
That's a collection of dream sequences that have no reason to be there. It's just cool imagery for cool image's sake.
100%.
There's a castle, there's like samurais, robot samurais fighting, and then like robots on a train.
When I'm saying give Inception to another filmmaker, I'm not saying give it to Zack Snyder.
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, it's good. The hallway fight, it's one of the greatest practical action sequences ever.
Yeah.
It's very inventive and visually stunning, and it embraces the possibilities of the premise a little bit more compared to other moments, because then you have the climax of the film is like, yeah, we're on a snowy mountain and we need to get into this facility, and it feels real. It feels like they are in the real world and not in a dream scenario. So
for me, the weakest part of the movie, that sort of last act, it's on whenever I do rewatch this film, and I think I've seen it within the last year. To me, it drags a little bit on rewatches towards the end, and it's so much stronger in the setup and the beginning of the adventure.
Think of the potential, because like the idea is we need to go into Cillian Murphy's subconscious to instill this idea. So maybe imagine the deepest level of his mind is not simply like this military fortress in the snow, but something that reflects his childhood imagination or deepest memories, and like
some creepy sex dungeon.
yeah, like something that he would dream of as a child. But like again, Nolan clearly wasn't interested in making that, so maybe I shouldn't be complaining about the fact that it doesn't have that. I'm just saying, for what I like in movies and what I like to see and what I would have done with the same premise, I think dreams don't have to be logical, and that's precisely what makes them fascinating. So if you make a very logical movie about dreams, then you're missing out on some cool stuff that you could do.
Yeah. And it's one of those Nolan films where there's a lot of expository dialogue here, but
Yeah.
I think because of the way the characters have been developed and their relationships between each other, and the way the film's structured, that we bring on, he has to bring in a new architect, which is Elliot Page's character, and obviously things need to be explained to them. So it really works. And like I said, I mean, people found this film confusing when it came out, but I think they lay it all out, the science behind everything, super well in the movie, to the point where you don't question anything really.
Yeah, it's not confusing at all, and Elliot Page's character is there to ask questions and to get answers, and Nolan is very smart to be like, oh, we need an exposition scene, let's just fly to Paris and do it there. So it's a little bit more interesting looking. He always finds fun ways to set a scene where he needs to explain something that could be boring, but like it sets the scene in a way where it becomes engaging and interesting and cool. Also, impossible to talk about Inception without mentioning the score.
Yeah, I was literally just going to be my final thing. The secret weapon of Hans Zimmer strikes again. It's so good. It's so good.
That became like part of culture, like right away. Like even people who haven't seen Inception have probably heard this like booming brass kind of echo sound, and they've done it, like they've used it in 1,000 different movies and trailers for years.
And I love the ending score as well. And again, kind of similar to Interstellar, we have this. In Interstellar, we have that poem which sort of prevails through the story. And in this one, we have a conversation that Cobb has with his wife, Marion Cotillard's character, where he's like, you're standing, you're waiting for a train, that whole thing that they recite to each other.
Love it.
And it plays at the very end as
you don't know where the train is gonna take you.
Yeah, as his dreidel, like spinning top thing, is still spinning with the music. Oh, it's so poetic. It's really beautifully done.
It's perfect. Yeah. Agreed. I guess I wanted to mention this element that doesn't work as well on a rewatch for me, but I think Nolan wanted Inception to function primarily as a suspenseful heist film, so the dreams need to be logical for the audience to understand the objective and the danger and the mechanics. In that sense, I think Nolan found the balance he was looking for. It's just not quite the balance I personally would have preferred, but that doesn't mean that the movie is bad. It's a defining blockbuster of this generation, and it's smart, but it's not inaccessible. It's visually spectacular, but it's grounded in emotion. Yeah, it's great.
Like we said, one of those films, and Nolan has a few of these, when you watch it when in your younger years, you come out of it thinking, I think I've watched the best film ever made.
Yeah.
And then you know, some sense takes over, but you know, they are up there.
And it's still incredibly hard and remarkable to have anyone think that about your movie for even a second.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We became more jaded throughout the years, and now, you know, like we judge movies on a more, I guess, cynical scale. But still, these movies were awesome, and they still are.
Yeah.
You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
Now, yeah, moving on to something as awesome, maybe even more awesome.
All right.
For my number 2, and this is sort of burying the lead here of my favorite Nolan film, but you know, my number 2 is Batman: The Dark Knight.
All right.
As I'd mentioned before, probably not the best Batman movie, but for me, the most entertaining. This is probably my most rewatched movie of all time.
Nice.
I've seen this film a disgusting amount of times, but it's such a comfort movie. It's such a go-to. Just put it on. You know, it's not feel good, but it just makes me feel good.
Nice. I am so happy. I had my reservations about this structure, about, you know, this ranking, because I was like, oh my god, like what if the rankings that we gave to the movies widely differ, and how is it gonna work, how we're gonna discuss everything. But I'm so happy because I have Memento at number 2, so this means that we have the same movie at number 1.
Nice.
So yeah, let's get into The Dark Knight, even though we've already spoken about it a little bit in both our sections about The Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins. But I think this movie, of course, deserves its own little yapping from the both of us to get our thoughts out. So please.
Absolutely. And you know, I think all the people I know that love this movie have also seen this movie 100 times as well. So I suppose there's not much that needs to be said for the plot wise, but we'll do, you know, obviously a little setup for it. This was the second installment of Batman's Nolan trilogy, and we get Batman facing off with the Joker, iconic Batman villain. And like we said, it's this contrast of chaos and order. And, you know, Joker's come in and he's sort of overtaken the criminal gangs in Gotham, and his whole sort of premise of coming in, he's like, you know, you pay me to kill the Batman, and I'm gonna end all this for you, basically. And it's just them two, a clash of forces, and the sort of sacrifices that Batman has to take, or, you know, thinks he has to take to apprehend a villain as sort of unpredictable and as wild as the Joker. And wow, I mean, that's kind of what this film's known for. It's known for Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. It's one of the most iconic villain performances. It still permeates villain performances today.
Oh, God.
How many times do you see a character playing a villain and you're like, you're doing Heath Ledger's Joker? I see it all the time still today.
It happened 2 weeks ago when I went to see Supergirl in the theater.
Well, really? See, it's
Yeah.
I mean, and it makes sense. It's so influential, and the amount I've seen so much behind the scenes stuff about Heath Ledger and this film and the performance he gave. I think, I can't remember who made it, but there was a little short documentary made about his last 2 films working on The Dark Knight, and that Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus thing that he worked on as well. Yeah. And there's a really nice interview with Michael J. White, who's a actor and martial artist, and he plays Gamble in The Dark Knight. He's the one who he puts a hit out on the Joker, and he's bring him into me dead or alive, and he ends up getting screwed over.
Yeah.
But he in an interview, he's talking about, you know, there was all this sort of mythos spoken about Heath Ledger in this film, that how the Joker has sent him crazy and it's what led to his untimely death. And that doesn't seem to really be the case in reality. When you hear actors talking about their experience working with him, they're like, he switched it on and he switched it off.
Yeah.
You know, as professional as they come. He would walk on set as Heath Ledger and, you know, giving notes to everyone and being the nice guy that everyone knew he was. And then once those cameras started rolling, he was this unpredictable force of nature. And
amazing.
there's like a script to screen Instagram page which plays you on one half of the screen. It will sort of scroll down down like teleprompter style of a script, and it shows you the scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker has infiltrated Wayne Tower and he's interrupted the party they're having for Harvey Dent, and he's got Maggie Gyllenhaal in his hands.
Yeah.
And you see the script and you see what Heath Ledger does, and what Heath Ledger does is so different to what's in the script. And you can imagine every take he did was completely different, and what he gives is just unreal. Like, as Nolan, you must be sitting there thinking, fuck, we have struck gold here, dude.
Yeah, and to think that people were really skeptical about him when he was casted, people thinking that it was a ridiculous
Oh
casting
my
choice.
god, yeah. One of the most controversial castings of all time.
Yeah, like him and Bond, like Daniel Craig, I remember at the time, people were not happy. But then the movie came out and he completely silenced every criticism. It's so fascinating and like it's so different from any other version of the character as well. Like, like you can't compare it to a Nicholson, you can't compare it to the animated version or the comic version. It doesn't lean into the comic book flamboyance of the Joker. He transforms him into this ghost of like unpredictable chaos. Like he's smart, he's funny, he's terrifying. It's incredible, and like how little we know about him does so much to create mystery and gravitas around the character. It's so compelling, everything he does. He's the protagonist basically of this film.
Yeah, he really is.
Batman is also there, and that's why I prefer Batman Begins as a Batman movie, but The Dark Knight remains a fantastic film about chaos versus order and just an amazing villain.
I mean, that opening sequence, dude, it's the best opener for any of the trilogy.
Of course.
You have to agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my, I could just watch that scene over and over again. The way they construct it.
It's perfect.
We get tidbits from the other criminals about the Joker, and it's like they start falling one by one, and then the last guy in the mask pulls the mask off, and the big reveal of the Joker underneath. It's so amazing. They're like, I'm supposed to kill the bus driver. Like, it's just the the lines he has in this are so iconic.
Amazing, yeah. And also, speaking a bit more broadly about the movie, this film wasn't simply successful. Like, people forget this was a fucking cultural event. Like, I feel like everybody has seen The Dark Knight, and everybody was talking about it and was quoting it and debating it. And it's one of the last films, I think, that truly belongs to... We often speak about the idea of monoculture.
Yeah.
A single blockbuster could dominate the cultural conversation for months. That doesn't really happen anymore. We have streaming services, we have social media, we have fragmented viewing habits. And I think for a brief moment in 2008, the world was united watching The Dark Knight. The superhero craze, I guess, already started in the late 90s and early 2000s. We had Blade, we had the Spider-Man movies, we had the X-Men movies. But 2008 was the year of The Dark Knight and Iron Man.
Wow.
So, it was definitely the year of the comic book blockbuster as we know it now. So,
and at that point, we were like, oh my God, give me this for the next 40 years. And now we're like, no more, please. No more.
Yeah, from that point onward, it became almost expected that the biggest film of the year would be a superhero movie. And the only person that could compete with that was Nolan himself.
Yeah.
With his Inception and Interstellar and later Oppenheimer, I guess. He's the one filmmaker that people would rather watch.
Yeah, the commercial and sort of cultural success of this film is unparalleled. I remember all the they did loads of crazy marketing campaigns around this, and all this, like, they'd have like different websites you could go on to find clues about the movie. It was like you said, it was so ingrained in culture of the time and was such a zeitgeist moment. And again, obviously not just commercially successful. Heath Ledger got the Oscar for his performance in this, and I can't remember when it was. I might have been at school or at college writing an essay about The Dark Knight. It was a kind of a comparison between The Dark Knight and the Patriot Act that came in after 9/11 in America. Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's so ingrained in that. We obviously have the Joker and the chaos element, but we have, I suppose, Batman Batman's more central story in this is he has the whole thing with Lucius Fox about this sonar technology which can spy on every citizen in Gotham, and it's
basically
like,
a control state.
yeah, is the threat worth
Giving up your freedom and
creating a surveillance, giving up your freedoms and creating a surveillance state? You know, obviously Batman comes to the conclusion at the end, no, it's not. You know, freedom is freedom over everything, and I love that message. And
once that I captured the Joker.
yeah. Let me use it first, just this one time.
And then I can destroy it.
Yeah, and I just think it's so smart, and it's why it has almost a bit of a timeless feel about it, the film, because it has so much sort of political and cultural implications in it. We still feel the effects of today, so it's this is a genius film.
Genius film. And I also want to mention, we haven't yet, Harvey Dent, Aaron Eckhart. I think
Oh, wow.
another major reason the film works so well is this character and this performance. Even if you're not familiar with the comics, it works either way. It works if you know that Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face. It works if you don't, and it's a very surprising twist, which I think is something that many comic book movies fail to do when they introduce a character like this. It's either like just for the fans and there's no much added value for like the regular moviegoer, or it's transformed for the film that it doesn't really resemble the comic book character anymore.
Yeah.
Here it's perfect, and I love how the Joker doesn't really corrupt Batman himself, but he corrupts the man who was supposed to kind of like
take over the mantle in a more legitimate way. Yeah.
And the moment where Joker tricks Batman into saving him instead of Rachel, Batman is, of course, Bruce is distraught by this, but the one who takes the hardest hit is Harvey himself. He survives the explosion. He has to live with the fact that Rachel is dead, and Rachel chose him, which we learn from the letter that she leaves Alfred. It's such a tragic but tragically inevitable the way that everything develops from there, and the final confrontation on the rooftop and the death of Harvey Dent. I think it's perfect, man. It's really like it speaks to the themes of the movie. It speaks to the themes that are often portrayed in Batman stories. It's the perfect dichotomy, like you have Batman at the center, you have the lawful good of Harvey Dent and the fallen hero that he becomes later, and then you have the chaos of Joker on the other side and like the criminal underworld of Gotham. And I think it's just a perfect representation of that kind of dynamic from the comics and from the character of Batman.
The way Nolan grounds what is on the surface quite a potentially goofy villain, in the comics, and obviously we see Tommy Lee Jones's interpretation of this before, and it's the most it's the most goofy dumb shit you've ever done. The way Nolan grounds the character is brilliant, because if you think on the surface he's a lawyer and something terrible happens to him, he's all scarred and burnt, and then he's got this sort of gimmick of a flipping of a coin, and if it lands on the ugly side he'll kill you, and if it doesn't land on that one he might spare you. That is a very sort of silly, sort of very comic booky premise, and the way Aaron Eckhart and Nolan get you to believe in Harvey Dent, pardon the pun again, because that's his fucking campaign slogan.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic. And if Heath Ledger wasn't so amazing in this movie, Aaron Eckhart would have stolen the show.
Yeah, it's perfect. You mentioned all the comic booky gimmicks that he has, like the flipping of the coin that's used in the comics and in the cartoon and in the video games. I don't know what to do. Let me flip the coin. But here it's thematic. He was the lawful guy who wanted the best for the city, and now is literally confronted with the idea that nothing that he has ever done matters, that like life is meaningless, his mission is meaningless, and so whatever, I'm just gonna flip a coin, because that's how life works. That's how there's no justice, there's no repercussions for the evil doings of these guys. I'm just gonna flip a coin and see what happens. And I think you take that character from the comic book that can definitely be silly, you take those elements and you turn them into they make so much sense for the story.
Absolutely. And it's in the way they circle back. I think the first sort of interaction him and Rachel have is, him talking about, he's gonna bury this guy, this Falcone gang member, in this case that he's working on, and he's like, oh, I'll flip a coin to see how I'm gonna tackle this, and flips the coin. She's like, you can't leave something like that down to chance, and he's like, I make my own luck, and shows that both coins have the same side of the face on it.
But then
when they're both tied up speaking to each other over the phone, and when they're surrounded by the gas canisters, it comes full circle, and she's like, oh, you make your own luck, because he thinks she's about to be saved, but it doesn't happen. It's Nolan's scripts. Like, this is when you're like, these are beautifully written.
Dude, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop this recording and go watch this movie right now. But yeah, it's just, oh man, it's a landmark blockbuster, and it transcended genre, and people who do not care about superheroes or Batman, they love this movie. Heath Ledger's unforgettable as Joker, exceptionally great script, amazing themes explored in a very interesting, intriguing, and topical way. It's just a great movie. It's one of those movies where, like, it's not just a comic book film.
Oh my god, no.
You could say it helped kind of like legitimize this genre for a lot of people.
I think so. I think it did, yeah.
Because you can have great movies like this within the genre, and that was the first that really like broke into the mainstream and made people understand, okay, we can have thoughtful fun.
Yeah. Superhero films can be artistic too, and now that mirage has faded.
Oh, come on.
after many years.
We have Spider-Man coming out.
But yeah, and it was hard for me, man. It was hard for me not to put this as number one, because it's so, it's such an important film to me. It's like, me and my brother loved it, me and my family loved it, and you see it so many times over the years, over many, many years now. And I've definitely seen it a hell of a lot more times than my number one pick, but it just goes to tell you the quality of this final Nolan film. And I'm so glad, Tommy, that we have aligned right at the end. We have come together.
I am so happy. Yeah.
And it's The Prestige.
Yes.
Shoot me. Come on.
No, I can't
Do it!
This is just a masterpiece, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It has everything that makes Nolan such a fascinating filmmaker. It has a very intricate narrative and like layered storytelling and characters that are morally ambiguous but very interesting. And the ending of this film, man, it's so good.
Jesus Christ.
I absolutely adore this movie.
Yeah, this is, especially when you're, I don't know, I'm sure you probably had this too, because I feel like loads of people go through this. When you start to discover films in your sort of maybe your early teens, you get obsessed with films that are like mind-bending and like plot twisting.
Yeah.
Especially after you've experienced a couple of these kind of movies, you're like,
Where's
I
the
want to
twist?
feel like that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want that sensation of watching something and then maybe a reveal at the end completely recontextualizes the whole movie. There's a lot of those films out there now, but this, for me, this is the best mind-bending sort of psychological type thriller in terms of blockbusters there's ever been. Once you know the tricks, and I love the way this film's structured, because it's structured like The Magic Trick, and Michael Caine's character.
I could talk for hours about this.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that if you read this in a script, you'd be like, this movie is going to be the fucking best movie ever made. It's so scripty, but in a brilliant way.
Yeah.
And we get Michael Caine's sort of voiceover describing what the prestige is, and it's it's the way that a magic trick is structured, basically, and the film has the same structure.
I mean, a script has the same structure, basically. It's 3 acts. It's the pledge, it's the turn, and it's the prestige. And it's so, again, using that word again, it's elegant.
It's genius as well.
Should we talk about the plot real quick, and then we can gush about this movie for a while?
Yeah. This is adapted from a novel, right?
Yeah. The story follows two young magicians, Alfred Borden and Robert Anger, who begin as colleagues in the beginning, and then tragedy turns them into bitter rivals. Each magician is consumed by the desire to outperform the other, and like they sacrifice sacrifice relationships and morality, even humanity at some point in pursuit of the perfect illusion. The structure, as you mentioned, is inspired by the structure of a magic act, but also it has like multiple framing devices, like characters reading diaries left behind by other characters. And it sounds complicated, but like when you're watching it and you're engrossed in it, it works, it flows so well, it's perfect. And also, it gives you a great idea of who these characters are, Borden and Angier, the two competing magicians, and what they want to achieve and how they want to one-up each other in different points of their lives. And the idea of these three acts and the fact that they're not just the acts of a magic trick, but also the blueprint for a screenplay. The film itself functions as a magic trick. It presents information, it misdirects, and ultimately delivers one of the most satisfying reveals, I think, in modern cinema.
And just like we said, maybe about Memento and Inception, once you've seen the end of The Prestige, you're like, fuck. It's like, okay, well now, it's the same thing if you've ever known a magician or somebody that does magic tricks in your life. If they teach you the trick, you're like, okay, well, you have to show me again now, because now I want to see the mechanics of it. Do you know what I mean? Now that I know how it's done, I want to watch it again and see the mechanics of how it was done. And this film has the exact same feel to it. Once you know the twists, you're like, oh well, I have to rewatch this instantly to see all the clues, to see the mechanics. And how many films do you sit through that are like over 2 hours long and you are gagging to see it again almost straight away? That's such a rare feeling you get.
Yeah. It's also like how complex the story feels, but like it's never confusing. The idea that it's essentially like journals within journals and like flashbacks within flashbacks and stories manipulating other stories, and somehow it all remains coherent and it makes sense and you follow along. And the need and want to rewatch it is not because it doesn't make sense, but because it does and you want to understand it better. Also, we should mention our two leads, because Hugh Jackman, I genuinely think this might be his best performance or my favorite performance of his as Robert Angier.
Yeah. So I think for me, Prisoners is like his best performance.
Yeah,
but
okay, that's fair.
this is my favorite of his. And I think I have seen people talk about that he's not that amazing in this film, but like, when I remember that sequence when they find the double of him, and they say find that other guy, and like the performance between those two versions of the Angier character, or Hugh Jackman's two characters, they're so wildly different that they almost do seem like, is this a different person?
He's having so much fun.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
They just gave him a different nose and he feels like a completely different character.
And like a big buck teeth, like they give him a big mouth.
Yeah.
But he plays it so well.
But the character of Angier is so deeply insecure and jealous and consumed by obsession underneath the surface, but he wants to play himself as like fun and intelligent. And the more successful Borden becomes, Christian Bale's character, he loses himself trying to surpass him. And I think it's a very layered performance, and we have to see him at different stages of his life. We see him as a young man, we see him as like the obsessed magician that he becomes, and then we see him at the end of the film, or well, at the beginning as well. And it's like it's three different performances. Like it's a very difficult character to play, and I think he does it so well. Christian Bale, equally fantastic as Alfred Borden. Both of these characters are awful. They are a horrible human being that hurt everyone around them.
Yeah, it feels like Angier is the hero for a large portion of the early moments in the film, and it's not until he enacts some revenge on Borden then you're really in such a morally grey area where you don't know who you're rooting for really here. But whilst we're on the characters, I think I mentioned this earlier on as I think I mentioned that one of my favourite Nolan films has almost one of the worst examples of a loving relationship in it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this isn't just Nolan's fault, because Christian Bale has this issue in a lot of his films too.
Okay.
In a lot of films where he has a love interest or a love counterpart. I don't get that.
You don't
I don't get
buy
the
it.
chemistry. I don't buy it at all. I don't feel it. And in this one,
Because he's a psychopath.
yeah, exactly.
You're talking about Rebecca Hall or Scarlett Johansson, or both?
It's more Rebecca Hall all, I guess.
Yeah.
I just do not believe their relationship at all. And, the only bits of it I believe is when she turns to him and she's like, today I don't think you love me. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't
Yeah.
think he loves you any day, to be honest.
That's
But
the one line. I think, like, again, we complained about Nolan and women in Nolan movies before. Unfortunately, Rebecca Hall's character comes across as very one note. And she's a great actress. I love her in everything I've ever seen her in. And her emotional deterioration is heartbreaking, but it's often implied or, it's off screen. And, she slowly realizes that her husband is not who she thinks he is. And
literally.
yeah, it's tragic.
It's tragic, but do you feel the tragedy of it? Like, I feel the tragedy of it when Borden is locked up and he wants to see his daughter.
Yeah.
Like, I feel it more within the father-daughter relationship.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
with him and her, it's like, hey, you go on and become the greatest magician ever. I honestly don't mind if you two stay together in terms of the film.
Yeah, like, it's a very dense film, and her character got the shorthand of the stick. She's overshadowed by the film's larger mystery, and like, she does a lot with very little. And you get the idea, and with just that one sentence, today you don't love me, maybe tomorrow, it's at first she's fine with that. And then progressively she understands, no, I'm not fine with this. But the idea that she would then just go to the extreme of killing herself, I think that's a little bit more difficult to believe and understand for what we've shown.
Felt like there was some missing beats there, maybe, or some extra scenes with her. But you're right, she elevates the material in it, and it's not such a dour note of the film that it creates any sort of unenjoyment in those sequences. It's just funny. Whenever I rewatch it back, and I'm watching it back with friends, we are just like, Christian Bale doesn't give a fuck about this lady.
Yeah.
It's so
But
obvious.
that's kind of like, you should feel like part of him does, but then at the same time,
I know. They there is an explanation for it. Yeah, there is an actual plot
he
reason.
clearly cares about his tricks and his career more than he does about his family, even though one of the two Bordens loves Rebecca Hall's character.
I guess just we never see a scene with that Borden and her together. We only ever see the other Borden
being an absolute ass. Now, and also that, I think, would literally destroy the relationship between the two brothers. Like, can you just be nice to Rebecca, for Christ's sake? Like, just be nice.
It's like, no. No, I just want to make magic.
Yeah, but then we have Scarlett Johansson.
That works a lot better because I think her character has more to do and she's more affecting of the plot because she sort of plays between both Angier and Borden. So I think her relationship works better. But it's, it's kind of, it's necessary to tell the story.
Yeah.
But this is not the central focus of the story. The relationships, their separate relationships are not, it's their relationships with each other, Borden versus Angier. That is the movie.
The
So
rivalry.
it doesn't affect it in any negative way. Yeah, the rivalry is the film. And just the surprises you get in this one. David Bowie is in this.
As Nikola Tesla.
What the fuck? That's so random.
Yeah, it's so random, but inspired.
And
I
obviously,
should say.
Bowie's done movies before, and he's a very charismatic performer. So it totally works. I totally believe him as Tesla, and it's not as distracting as it should be.
No.
And we've seen Nolan become akin to this sort of. Giving famous people starring roles in his films that aren't necessarily actors, and I think this is the best example of it working really well here. You just have a man who is enigmatic in David Bowie and himself, and you let him play the role of one of the most enigmatic men in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Nikola Tesla.
It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Also, Andy Serkis as Tesla's assistant is wonderful.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stacked movie, especially in hindsight. I think a lot of these actors, like Scarlett Johansson, were at the beginning of their careers at this stage, and now they are hugely popular and hugely famous. And a lot of them went on to do Marvel movies for some reason. All of them, mostly. Like, maybe, no, David Bowie didn't, but like all of the others have been in Marvel.
Only because he passed before then, but if he hadn't, he'd be in fucking Multiverse of Madness 3 right now.
One of the things that I love most about The Prestige is how it plays with your expectations all the time. You see every trick having a rational explanation for the entirety of the film. It's a very grounded film. Like, we know that magic is not real and that they are only implementing tricks, doing it really well, and it looks like magic, but it's not magic. The movie teaches us how magicians manipulate perception and how every illusion is ultimately about a deception or a sacrifice, like in the case of the little bird, or a misdirection. And it encourages you to think logically and assume that every mystery has a practical solution, and then it fucking pulls the rug from under you. It's
Yeah.
like, no, Tesla has invented magic, actually. And I
Yeah.
fucking love that. And the fact that the movie starts with a shot of like the multiple hats, but you don't clock it until later on that that's what it's supposed to be, that all his hats have been duplicated and sent somewhere in the forest. It's such a bold, creative decision. It recontextualizes everything, and also it gives way to the ending, which is amazing. So
That, I mean, yeah, that last shot, but it's very what we've come accustomed to Nolan. It's, you know, if we're talking about Interstellar,
Yeah.
same with this. Maybe the studio would have interfered and been like, I know you're ruining it with this big weird
Yeah.
ending, but Nolan goes all out, and you've got to respect it.
They could have easily felt cheap in any other movie, but here it feels earned
Yeah.
because, you know, like obsession and sacrifice, they're such central themes in the movie that, of course, Anger would go to this lengths. Of course, he would sacrifice himself over and over and over and over again just to one-up this other magician guy who doesn't even care that much anymore.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time once Angier. There's a very large portion of the movie is Angier going off to Tesla and helping him fund a machine, and it doesn't work out the first time, works out again later. But it's not like this twist out of nowhere. Like, it's one of those ones where they give you all the clues to somewhat figure it out beforehand, before the reveal at the end. And I suppose that's not necessarily that. I mean, the big twist at the end is probably more the Borden side of the reveal.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of less clued in towards that one. And it's funny because whenever I rewatch this film, the Borden reveal is so obvious.
Yeah, because there's this one guy, he kind of looks like Christian Bale with a fake beard. It's like in 4 scenes, you're like, okay, who's this guy? What is he doing?
But Borden's character mentions him so much. I can't remember exactly. What do you remember his name? Mr. Fallon.
Mr. Fallon.
Yeah, it's so funny because, you know, whenever he goes away somewhere, he tells his wife and his daughter, "Don't worry, Mr. Fallon will look after you." And it's like, I think the reason for him being around is he is his Cutter. So Cutter is Michael Caine's character, and he's like the guy who gets them the gigs and gets them in the bookings to the theaters. And I think that's what Borden says Fallon is for him. His offstage engineer or whatever. But he's referenced so much, he never says a word. The way they shoot him is quite clear to obscure his appearance. It's clear he's got some prosthetics on and a fake mustache. And so, because it's funny, because I showed this film to one of my good friends, like maybe last year or the year before when we were living together, and he hadn't seen it. I was almost like nervous, thinking because I'm watching it again, thinking, oh fuck, like this is so obvious. He's gonna guess this twist.
You were watching him watching the movie instead of actually watching the movie.
Yeah, 100%. And because I'm pretty sure the very first time I watched this, I was a lot younger, so I did not see that coming.
No, me neither.
And that twist blew my socks off. But then when I was rewatching it, I was like, how is nobody noticing? This guy is clearly a double or something like that. But he didn't get it. So
yeah, no, it's obscured enough, and it's such a secondary character that you don't really think about him on a first viewing that much. Like you keep forgetting about him, and then at the end, I'm like, oh my god, of course, it's him.
Yeah, the film's so engrossing. I think it makes you forget. Yeah, you're right.
But then, like once every time he's on screen, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's Christian Bale in a wig, of course.
Yeah, that's what I kind of mean about on rewatch. It may be the Prestige, but I mean, the Prestige gains some value and loses some value on rewatches. You get to see some of the clues beforehand, or you see the trick being constructed before your eyes, and maybe that dampens the experience, or it heightens it.
That's part of the fun, though.
Yeah, totally.
I think like many movies that have like this kind of twist that recontextualizes the film, I don't often like to revisit on a second time, because the point of the movie was to misdirect you and surprise you at the end. But here, I just love everything about the film, the performances, the setting, the production design, the costumes. It just captures this period in history in such a way. It's a genuine spectacle. I think the historical context makes the rivalry even more compelling because, it's the kind of stuff that we don't really have in modern day, not in this way, like magicians were the craze of the time and they had all these huge spectacles, like and like theaters were like booked for months for their routines and like it's a fun moment in time that was also explored by another movie that came out that year. When like competing Hollywood studios release similar movies in the same year and one is clearly better than the other. In this case, do you remember The Illusionist?
Did that come out the same year?
Yeah.
Oh, what an idiot. Who decided to do that?
Yeah, that movie does not hold.
I vaguely remember The Illusionist. Yeah, I remember it being fine. It's just a very bang average movie.
Well, when you are fine and you come out at the same time as one of cinema's greatest fucking movies,
the greatest magician movie that will ever be made.
Yeah.
I know you're gonna struggle.
But yeah, it's a masterclass in storytelling, and I could rewatch this movie 1,000 times and I would never get bored.
Yeah. I went a long time without having rewatched it again and seen it sort of twice in the last maybe year or two because I showed it to a few people and it just reinvigorated just how brilliant this film is. And if it's one of those films, if you get a new girlfriend or whatever and they haven't seen this, you're like,
you
oh,
haven't
fuck
seen
yeah.
it. Finally,
we get to it, and I'll be so jealous of people who haven't seen it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just smash my head against a wall and just forget the Prestige so I could rewatch it again. But I've had a lot of fun showing it to people who haven't seen it before and experiencing it through them. It's a masterpiece. It's a like I said, it's a script that if you read it, you'd be like, this is an absolute A+ tier script, and it couldn't have been translated on screen any better and by someone who was a perfect choice for this kind of screenplay.
Agreed. So The Prestige is our favorite Christopher Nolan film. That much is clear. There's another Nolan movie coming out, basically the reason why we're doing this retrospective. So my final question for you, Tyler, is where do you think the Odyssey will rank among all of these classics?
I hate to be, especially after looking through this filmography and just coming to realize how amazing pretty much all his filmography really is, and the high heights of it.
Yeah.
But I have noticed a bit of a trend with my rankings in particular, is that it goes up in a peak and it comes down in a trough. And in terms of his earlier films, he has that peak from about sort of 2005 to 2012, and that's the Batman Begins, Prestige, Dark Knight, Inception, that kind of era. And so I do think this is going to trend in that direction, and it's probably... I'm worried, man. I'm worried. I think this is going to sit in between Tenet and Oppenheimer as the second least enjoyable Nolan movie of all time. What about you?
You are, as always, you're very cynical and very, you expect the worst. But I guess that's.
I hate to do it, man. But did you see that screenshot they put out the other day?
No, which one?
John Bernthal and Tom Holland. Look at it now.
Okay.
Please. It literally looks like ITV's, BBC's Robin Hood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah. That looks awful, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't look quite right from the trailers. I hate to speculate, and I hate people who are like literally already judging the film based on the promotional material. But to be fair, the promotional material is there to make you excited about the movie.
That is what it's there for.
If it doesn't look that good, then I guess you are allowed to feel like the movie's gonna be bad. But like the casting in general, and I'm not talking about Lupita Nyong'o as Helen because I know that people are gonna think that. I don't care. Diane Kruger as Helen of Troy was as miscast as the character as Lupita Nyong'o might be. Like, I don't care that like people are like losing their minds over that, and I think that's so stupid. I honestly my main issue with the casting is literally Matt Damon as Odysseus. Like,
yeah,
an American guy from Boston. I expect Nolan to do do a little better than that. And instead he decides to put all these big A-list actors in his movie, which, I understand to an extent.
I mean, yeah, there's a time when you switch that up, it's like, this was the first thing that just popped into my head, but Mel Gibson, when he went off and did his historical epic in Apocalypto,
Yeah.
he shoots it over there, and he shoots it with mostly non-professional actors, all from the local area, all like linked heritage to the story that they're telling, and he made one of the greatest historical epics I've ever seen. And for some reason, Nolan, I'm with you. The biggest worry for me was that initial casting of Matt Damon, because I don't think he has the gravitas or charisma to pull off a character like that and make me believe he's anything else other than Matt Damon.
And I like Matt Damon, but like in the proper role. Like, I don't know, like I remember like the announcement of the Odyssey was like, first they announced the movie. It was like, Christopher Nolan's next film will be an adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait. That's amazing, because I love Christopher Nolan. I love The Odyssey. I literally read The Odyssey in high school and I fucking loved that story. And so I was really excited. And also what I was expecting is, we've been talking about Nolan for close to 4 hours now. So, we've established that he likes to ground his stories in realism. And so what I was expecting from Nolan was like a reinterpretation of the myth, like grounding it into like what could have actually really happened. You're like, no monsters, no cyclops, no like sea monsters or anything, no witches, but like what actually happened. And
that would have been the wrong thing to do.
Which would have been maybe the wrong thing to do, because the Odyssey is the Odyssey. But like what I was initially expecting was like, maybe he's gonna adapt these more fantastical elements into more grounded versions of those elements. But then, I was happy to learn that, like he was actually just adapting the Odyssey as is.
Well, we shall see about that, whether he's doing an interpretation of the Odyssey as is. I think that won't be the case.
In terms of, there's cyclops and there's monsters and there's giants and whatever.
Yeah.
But then like the first castings came out, and it was like, I think Matt Damon, and then a week later Tom Holland was confirmed.
Tom Holland and Zendaya.
Yeah, and then like you got Zendaya and Robert Pattinson and Charlize Theron, and I'm like, really? Like all of these castings feel strange to me.
All actors that I like individually. Like, I've liked all of those actors in individual films, particularly like Charlize Theron and, Robert Pattinson. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel right for this. And there is a reason that when people make historical epics, they bring in a lot of British people, or they bring in a lot of foreign actors that aren't American, because Americanisms and the American language does not translate to fantastical or historical epics.
Yeah.
It never has. It never will. It just doesn't.
Yeah, no, agreed. But like, I honestly, like, the promotional material and the casting did not do it for me. But I trust Nolan to an extent. I think he can craft a great film, like an entertaining film. I think the movie will be very interesting and very unique. And like, I'm looking forward to like the scale of it. And it's definitely gonna be a worthwhile experience. I'm just dubious that it's gonna be like the definitive adaptation of that story that I think many people were hoping it would be. So you said it's gonna be near the bottom of your ranking once it come out. I think it's probably gonna be somewhere in the middle. It's never gonna break into the top 5, because that's, I think those are locked in for me. The Prestige, Memento, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Inception.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make a movie that I will love more than those. But you can probably beat Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer's your number 6, though, isn't it?
But yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So you could see it's going high as high as that, right? Okay, yeah.
You could.
Yeah,
just
fair.
because I love the setting and I love like the idea of like a big epic Odyssey movie. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I was so excited for this one. I still am excited, more apprehensively now, I guess. But it's I love ancient Greek mythos. I feel like we used to get a lot of those before our time. You get a lot of Greek or like ancient Roman epics, right? That used to be such a big thing in cinema. Jason and the Argonauts, the older version of the Odyssey. And it seems like we went away from those, and like the biggest modern ones we have is like Clash of the Titans,
Oh, God.
or like Wrath of the Titans, you know? And they're not it. They're good when you're a kid, but they're just not the ones. And so this has all the ingredients to create something special here. I just worry whether the Nolanisms will be the thing that really get in the way of this film being as epic and as I don't know, maybe accurate's not the right word, because I don't think a lot of this will be accurate, but I want it to feel realistic. Even though we're dealing with fantastical things, like I don't, you know, a lot of sort of period piece films and TV shows have this issue, whereas if you feel like they're just actors playing dress up, it really kills the suspension of disbelief.
It does, yeah. I'm experiencing that right now with the Avatar The Last Airbender live action TV show on Netflix. Like, I keep thinking these are just guys in costumes, and it's unfortunate, but yeah, I hope that doesn't happen with the Odyssey.
Yeah, because the promotional material gives me that sense. I'm like, oh, these are just Hollywood actors dressing up, playing dress up, and they're in a movie. I would have loved to have seen somebody like a Mads Mikkelsen in the lead role.
Yeah, classic Greek look.
Yeah. Yes, you know, it's vaguely foreign, and that works well enough for mass audiences.
Yeah, no, we'll see. By the time this second part of our retrospective comes out, the movie will be out. I think if we're lucky, this has come out on the day of the release of the Odyssey. So I guess let us know in the comments, you know, what do you think of the new movie? Where does it rank for you in Christopher Nolan's filmography? And we'll get our review of the film out to you as soon as possible.
Yep, excited to see it, and this has been a very good, fun, deep dive into a legendary filmmaker who we should appreciate, because he's still probably got many years left of filmmaking within him, and it's rarer and rarer these days that you get a director out there making big blockbuster movies that have this kind of critical appeal as well. So I think, you know, treasure Nolan whilst he's still here, because he hasn't set a limit like Tarantino on how many movies he's gonna make. But
Yeah, I was about to say.
the day will come when he stops, and we will be all the sadder for it. So relish them whilst they can, and if there's any on this list you haven't seen, go out and watch them, because every Nolan film is worthwhile.
Except Tenet, actually. No, I'm kidding. It's good. It's decent. Okay. Welcome to the cult, guys. It's been a while since I said that.
Nice.